In Philadelphia's Children's Hospital, a young girl named Zaria Chen taught sick kids to play basketball using balloon balls while fighting for her own life. Her story went viral, reaching NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal in Tokyo. But what no one knew, not even Zaria herself, was that 20 years ago, in this same hospital, Shaq had made a promise to her father that would change everything. This isn't just a story about a last-minute meeting between a basketball legend and a dying girl. It's about how hope passes from one generation to the next, and how sometimes the biggest assists happen long before the final buzzer. Zaria Chen pressed her nose against the tablet screen, her dark eyes sparkling as she watched Shaquille O'Neal dunk over 3 defenders. The old NBA highlight reel was her favorite birthday tradition. Every year, she and Grandma Rose would sit on their worn blue couch, share a small cake, and watch basketball legends make magic on the court. Boom! Did. "You see that, Grandma?" Zaria exclaimed, rewinding the clip for the 3rd time. "That's what I'm gonna do in my game next week." Grandma Rose chuckled, adjusting her glasses as she folded laundry beside her granddaughter. "Baby girl, you're 11 today. Maybe wait until you're a little taller than my shoulder before trying to dunk like Shaq." "Dad wasn't much taller than you when he started playing," Zaria said softly, touching the frame on the side table. The photo showed a younger Grandma Rose and a tall, broad-shouldered man with Zaria's same bright smile, holding a tiny basketball. The room grew quiet. Grandma Rose set down the shirt she was folding and pulled Zaria close. "Your daddy would be so proud of you, sweetheart. You've got his spirit on the court, always making everyone around you play better." Zaria nodded, fighting the familiar ache in her chest whenever they talked about her father. She hadn't told Grandma, but sometimes when she played basketball, she pretended he was watching. She imagined his deep laugh echoing across the court, just like in the videos Grandma had saved on their old phone. "Look, Grandma. This is my favorite Shaq moment," Zaria said, changing the subject as she often did when things got too emotional. On screen, Shaq was helping a small boy who had run onto the court during warm-ups shoot a basket. The giant NBA star lifted the child up so he could dunk, both of them grinning ear to ear. "That's why I love him best," Zaria continued. "He's huge and strong, but he's gentle too. Just like—" She trailed off, but Grandma Rose understood. "Just like your daddy," she finished, kissing the top of Zaria's head. "Now, how about some birthday cake before I head to my evening shift?" Zaria tried to hide her disappointment. She knew Grandma Rose had to work both jobs to keep their small apartment. But birthdays were harder without her. "Can we just watch one more clip?" "One more," Grandma Rose agreed, already putting on her nurse's shoes. "But then, homework before. Practice, okay? Coach Martinez said you've got a big game coming up." Zaria nodded eagerly, though a wave of tiredness washed over her. She'd been feeling it more lately, a heaviness in her limbs that made even simple layups feel like a challenge. But she wouldn't tell Grandma about that. Not when she was working so hard to pay for Zaria's basketball camp and new shoes. Instead, she focused on the screen where Shaq was visiting a children's hospital, making sick kids laugh with his silly faces and gentle giant presence. Something about the clip made her feel strange, like she was supposed to remember something important. But the feeling faded as quickly as it came. "Grandma," Zaria called out as her grandmother headed for the door, "do you think Shaq ever visits Philadelphia anymore?" Grandma Rose paused, an odd expression crossing her face. "I'm sure he does, baby." "Why do you ask?" "No reason," Zaria shrugged, though her heart whispered otherwise. "Just wondering." After Grandma left, Zaria rewound the hospital clip one more time. The tiredness was getting stronger, making her head feel heavy and her vision blur slightly. But she couldn't sleep yet. She had practice in an hour, and the team was counting on their point guard. She pushed herself off the couch, stumbling slightly. On the screen behind her, Shaq was still making sick children smile, his laughter filling their small living room. Zaria grabbed her basketball from beside the door, trying to ignore how much heavier it felt lately. "Happy birthday, Daddy," she whispered to the photo by the door. Then she headed out to practice, determined to make her father proud, even as her body fought against every step. Little did she know, this birthday would be the beginning of a story that would connect her to her basketball hero in ways she could never imagine. But for now, she was just Zaria Chen, 11 years old, with a basketball under her arm and her father's fighting spirit in her heart, stepping out into the warm Philadelphia afternoon. The school gymnasium buzzed with excitement. Parents packed the bleachers, their voices echoing off the walls as the Roosevelt Middle School Tigers warmed up for the biggest game of the season. If they won today, they'd qualify for the Legends tournament, where the winning team would meet NBA legends at the Philadelphia 76ers arena. Zaria bounced the ball slowly, trying to focus as black spots danced at the edges of her vision. The fatigue had gotten worse over the past week, but she couldn't let her team down. "Not today." "Chen," Coach Martinez called from the sideline. "You okay? You're looking a little pale." "I'm good, Coach," Zaria forced a smile, dribbling with more energy to prove it. But even that simple movement made her arms feel like they were filled with cement. Her best friend Maya jogged over, her braids swinging. "Z, for real, you don't look so hot. Maybe you should—" "I said I'm fine," Zaria snapped, immediately regretting her tone. "Sorry, Em, I'm just nervous about the game." Maya didn't look convinced, but the referee's whistle cut off any further discussion. As team captain, Zaria walked to center court for the tip-off, her legs trembling slightly beneath her. The opposing team's center towered over her, a tall girl with fierce eyes and a tight ponytail. "Better step back, shorty," the girl smirked. "Wouldn't want you to get hurt." Zaria thought of Shaq's videos, how he never trash-talked back, just let his game speak for itself. She took a deep breath and focused on the referee's hand holding the ball. The whistle blew. The ball went up. And for a few beautiful minutes, everything else fell away. Zaria's first pass found Maya perfectly for a layup. Her second steal led to another basket. Even as her body screamed for rest, her mind stayed sharp, seeing the court like her father had taught her, like a chessboard where every move mattered. "That's it, Chen!" Coach Martinez shouted as Zaria threaded another pass through two defenders, just like we practiced. But halfway through the second quarter, something changed. The gym lights seemed to grow impossibly bright. The squeak of basketball shoes on hardwood became distant, like she was underwater. Zaria looked at the scoreboard. Tigers 24, visitors 22, but the numbers blurred together. "Z!" Maya's voice called out. "Heads up!" Zaria turned, seeing the ball coming her way. It was a perfect pass, just like they'd practiced hundreds of times. All she had to do was catch and shoot. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Basketball is simple, baby girl. See the ball, be the ball." She reached up, but her arms felt like they belonged to someone else. The ball sailed past her fingers, and then the bright gym lights were spinning, the ceiling rotating like a carnival ride she couldn't get off. The last thing Zaria heard was Maya screaming her name. The last thing she felt was the cool hardwood against her cheek. The last thing she thought was, "I'm sorry, Daddy. I didn't catch the ball." Then everything went black. When Zaria opened her eyes again, the gym's familiar smells of rubber and sweat had been replaced by antiseptic and latex. A steady beeping sound came from somewhere nearby. Her arm hurt where something was attached to it. "Grandma!" she called out, her voice scratchy. "I'm here, baby." Grandma Rose's face appeared above her, eyes red and puffy. "You gave us quite a scare." The game, Zaria tried to sit up, but couldn't find the strength. "Did we? Did we win?" A sob escaped Grandma Rose's throat. "Oh, my sweet girl, always thinking of others." That's when Zaria noticed the doctor standing in the corner of the room, holding a clipboard and wearing an expression she'd seen before, the same one the doctors had worn when they talked about her father. "Miss Chen," the doctor stepped forward, "I'm Dr. Patterson. We need to talk about some tests we ran when they brought you in." Zaria looked at her grandmother, whose hand was now squeezing hers so tight it almost hurt. "Tests?" Zaria's voice sounded small, even to her own ears. "But I just got tired. I just need to rest up for the tournament. The NBA legends will be there and—" "Zaria," Dr. Patterson's voice was gentle but firm. "The blood work showed some concerning results. We need to do more tests, but it appears you have a condition called acute lymphoblastic leukemia." The word hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Leukemia. Zaria knew that word. It was the word grown-ups whispered. The word that made people look at you differently. But Zaria's eyes filled with tears. "But I have basketball. I have the tournament. I have—" She couldn't finish. Grandma Rose gathered her into a careful hug, mindful of the IV lines. "You have us," Grandma Rose whispered fiercely. "You have me. And you have your daddy's fighting spirit. We're going to face this just like he taught us. Head up, heart strong." Outside the hospital room window, the warm Philadelphia afternoon had turned to evening. Somewhere in the city, Zaria's team was probably still celebrating or commiserating about the game. Somewhere, the Legends tournament was still going to happen. But in this quiet room, with its beeping machines and worried faces, Zaria Chen was no longer just a girl with a basketball and a dream. She was a girl about to begin the biggest fight of her young life. A fight that would lead her down a path she never expected, toward a destiny that had been set in motion long before she was born. Hospitals have their own kind of rhythm. Zaria learned. Different from the smooth flow of basketball, but a rhythm nonetheless. The steady beep of monitors marked time like a metronome. Nurses changed shifts like players rotating on court. And if you listened carefully enough, you could hear life's game playing out in all its intensity. Victories celebrated down the hall, defeats mourned in quiet rooms. 2 weeks into her stay, Zaria was still learning the rules of this new game. "That's 5!" she called out, as a medical glove balloon bounced off the ceiling and back into the small hands of 7-year-old Marcus. The boy sat cross-legged on the floor of the children's ward playroom, his orange beanie covering his hairless head. 6! His voice was barely a whisper, but his smile could have lit up the entire hospital. The glove balloon bounced again. "Remember what I told you," Zaria coached from her wheelchair. "Eyes on the target, soft hands, just like catching butterflies." Marcus had never touched a real basketball before meeting Zaria. Back home, he'd been more interested in bugs and books, but something about the way Zaria taught made him want to learn. 7! This time his voice was stronger. From the doorway, Nurse Jenny watched with mixed emotions. She'd been against moving Zaria to the playroom today. Her counts were down, and she needed rest. But Dr. Patterson had agreed that the girl's spirit needed this as much as her body needed medicine. "Coach Z!" a small voice called from the hallway. 9-year-old Sarah wheeled herself in, her IV pole decorated with Philadelphia 76ers stickers. "Are we having practice today?" "You bet," Zaria grinned, though it took visible effort. "Marcus is working on his catches. Want to show her your progress, Em?" Marcus nodded shyly, tossing the glove balloon higher. 8. Soon, the playroom filled with young patients. Some came walking, others in wheelchairs or pulled in beds. Each one had a story, a battle they were fighting. But for a precious hour, each day, they weren't cancer patients or sick kids. They were Coach Z's team. "Hey, Sarah," Zaria called out during their makeshift practice. "Remember what Shaq says about teamwork?" The girl thought for a moment. "The most important thing isn't scoring. It's making everyone around you better." "That's right," Zaria beamed, then caught herself against a wave of dizziness. She'd been having more of those lately, but she refused to let it show. These kids needed Coach Z later that afternoon. As Grandma Rose helped her back to her room, Zaria spotted a new face peering out from room 214. A tiny girl, couldn't be more than 5, clutching a worn teddy bear. "Hi there," Zaria waved. "I'm Zaria. Want to learn some basketball?" The girl shrank back into her room. "That's Lily," Nurse Jenny explained softly. "She arrived last night. Hasn't spoken a word since." Zaria nodded thoughtfully. "You know what? Nurse Jenny? I bet we have some extra glove balloons." By dinner time, the sound of counting floated from room 214. 1, 2, 3. Grandma Rose found Zaria in her bed that evening, scrolling through basketball clips on her tablet, despite her obvious exhaustion. "Baby girl, you need to rest," she said, adjusting Zaria's blankets. "I will, Grandma. Just looking for good drills to teach tomorrow." "Did you see Lily today? She caught the balloon 4 times, and Marcus is getting so good." And Sarah's figured out how to shoot from her chair, and Zaria. Grandma Rose's voice was gentle but firm. "The doctors say your numbers aren't good. You need to focus on getting stronger." "I am strong," Zaria insisted, but her voice wavered. "When I'm teaching them, I don't feel sick. I feel like I'm still me." Grandma Rose sat on the edge of the bed, taking Zaria's thin hand in hers. "You'll always be you, baby. The strongest, kindest, most determined girl I know. Just like Daddy," Zaria finished. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Grandma, do you think he was scared when he was sick?" "Oh, baby." Grandma Rose's eyes filled with tears. "Your daddy was the bravest person I knew. But you know what made him even braver? He wasn't afraid to need help sometimes, to rest when his body told him to." Zaria looked down at her tablet, where Shaq was frozen mid-dunk on the screen. "Sukuforn. I just want to help them not be scared." "And you are," Grandma Rose assured her. "But maybe tomorrow we take a little break? Let your body catch up to your big heart?" Before Zaria could answer, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Marcus's voice, stronger than they'd ever heard it, called out, 9, 10, 11. Coach Z, are you watching? 12. Zaria and her grandmother shared a look, and in that moment, they both knew there would be no breaks. Not while there were kids who needed Coach Z's magic. What Zaria didn't know was that her magic was already spreading beyond the hospital walls, touching lives she couldn't imagine, racing toward a destiny that would bring her face to face with her hero in ways she never expected. Diana Martinez had been a journalist for 15 years, covering everything from City Hall scandals to championship parades. But nothing had prepared her for what she witnessed in the children's ward of Philadelphia General Hospital, where her son Tommy was receiving treatment. "Mom," "You have to film this," Tommy whispered, tugging at her sleeve. "People need to see." "Coach Z," Diana adjusted her phone, careful to keep it subtle. Through the lens, she watched as a frail girl in a wheelchair orchestrated what could only be described as a miracle. Children with various stages of cancer, moving, laughing, playing with balloon basketballs made from medical gloves. "Keep your eyes up, Lily," the girl called out, her voice hoarse but encouraging. "Champion's posture, remember?" Little Lily, who hadn't spoken a word when she arrived 3 days ago, caught the balloon and grinned. "Like Shaq, Coach Z?" "Exactly like Shaq." Diana pressed record just as Marcus, in his trademark orange beanie, demonstrated his new dribbling technique for the group. The boy who'd been too weak to walk last week was now bouncing a balloon with surprising coordination. "That's my special." "Move," Zaria explained to the group. "The Coach Z bounce works every time." What the kids couldn't see was how tightly Zaria gripped her wheelchair's armrests between instructions, or how her skin had taken on a grayish tinge. But Diana's trained eye caught everything. Later that night, after Tommy had fallen asleep, Diana reviewed the footage. Her son's words echoed in her mind. "People need to see Coach Z." With trembling fingers, she began to write. "In a world of manufactured heroes, I found a real one in the children's ward of Philadelphia General. Her name is Zaria Chen, and she's redefining what it means to be a champion." The story went live on Diana's blog at midnight. By morning, it had been shared thousands of times. Coach Z. Marcus burst into the playroom the next afternoon, waving his mom's phone. "You're famous!" Zaria looked up from where she was teaching Sarah a new balloon shooting technique. "What?" But before Marcus could explain, Nurse Jenny appeared with tears in her eyes. "Zaria, honey, you need to see this." The nurse's phone showed hundreds of comments beneath Diana's article. "This is what real courage looks like. Prayers for Coach Z and her team. Someone get Shaq to see this." Zaria's eyes widened at the last comment. "Shaq? But it gets better." Nurse Jenny smiled, scrolling to show a new hashtag trending locally. Shannon Shaq meet Zaria. The movement had begun with a single tweet from another nurse, Carmen Rodriguez, who had worked at a Los Angeles hospital years ago. In 2010, Shaq visited our hospital and changed lives. Now there's another gentle giant making magic in Philly. ANBA, help make this happen. Shaq meets Zaria. The story spread like wildfire. Local news picked it up first, then national sports blogs. Videos of Coach Z's basketball camp circulated online, capturing the hearts of millions. "Look at this one, baby girl," Grandma Rose said, showing Zaria a video of a high school basketball team in Texas. The players were practicing with balloon basketballs, calling it the Coach Z Challenge, but Zaria could barely focus on the phone. The treatments were getting harder, her body weaker. Even sitting up took monumental effort now. "Did Marcus come today?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "You need to rest, sweetheart." "Grandma." Rose stroked her hair. "The kids understand." But the next morning, despite the doctor's protests, Zaria insisted on being wheeled to the playroom. She found it packed with children, all silently watching a small TV mounted on the wall. On screen, a reporter was interviewing the Philadelphia 76ers head coach. "The whole city is talking about Coach Z. Have you heard about this remarkable young lady? Heard about her?" The coach smiled. "My daughter's practicing the Coach Z bounce right now. What that young woman is doing, that's the true spirit of basketball. It's about lifting people up, giving them hope. And there's a movement to get Shaquille O'Neal to visit her? I can't speak for Shaq, but I know he's filming commercials in Asia right now. But let me say this, Coach Z, if you're watching, you've already won the most important game there is, the game of impact. You're changing lives, young lady. The playroom erupted in cheers. Marcus ran to Zaria's wheelchair, showing her his newly mastered Coach Z bounce with a real basketball one of the nurses had brought in. But Zaria didn't respond. Coach Z? Marcus's voice trembled. Nurse Jenny rushed forward just as Zaria slumped in her wheelchair. The room fell silent, except for the steady drip of the IV and Marcus's quiet sobs. "It's okay," Nurse Jenny assured the frightened children as she quickly wheeled Zaria out. "Coach just needs some extra rest today." In the hallway, Dr. Patterson was already waiting. His face told the story before his words did. The latest treatment wasn't working. Zaria's body was failing faster than anyone had expected. As they rushed her back to her room, Zaria's tablet slipped from her lap, clattering to the floor. The screen lit up, showing her favorite video. Shaq lifting that small boy to dunk during warm-ups. Somewhere across the world, in a Tokyo hotel room, Shaquille O'Neal was just waking up to hundreds of notifications and a story about a young girl in Philadelphia who was teaching sick children to play basketball with balloon balls. A girl whose father he'd met 2 decades ago, though he didn't know it yet. The biggest assist of Shaq's life was about to begin, but time was running out faster than anyone knew. Dr. Patterson's hands trembled as he reviewed the latest test results. In 20 years of pediatric oncology, he'd learned that medicine was as much about hope as science. But hope was getting harder to find in these numbers. "Miss Rose," he called softly to Zaria's grandmother, who hadn't left her granddaughter's bedside in 3 days. "We need to talk." Grandma Rose looked up from her worn Bible, her fingers still marking the page of Psalms she'd been reading, to Zaria's sleeping form. "How bad?" "The aggressive treatment isn't working as we'd hoped. Her body is..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We might need to start thinking about quality of life over..." "No." Grandma Rose's voice was steel. "Not again. I won't lose her like I lost her father." Down the hall, in the children's ward playroom, Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, methodically bouncing a balloon basketball. 1, 2, 3. Sarah wheeled herself over. "She'll come back, Marcus. Coach Z always comes back." But it had been 3 days since their coach had collapsed, and the playroom felt colder somehow, as if the sunshine had been dimmed. Even Lily had stopped talking again. In the nurses' station, Jenny and Carmen huddled over a computer, refreshing their social media feeds. The Shaq Meet Zaria hashtag had gone international, with messages pouring in from basketball fans worldwide. But the one response they needed hadn't come. "He's still in Tokyo," Carmen sighed, checking the latest news. 3 more days of commercial filming. Jenny wiped a tear. She might not have 3 days. The viral movement had taken on a life of its own. NBA players were posting videos practicing the Coach Z bounce. Children's hospitals across the country had started balloon basketball programs. A sports equipment company had even announced they were developing a special lightweight basketball for kids undergoing treatment, to be called the Coach Z ball. But in room 417, none of that mattered. Zaria drifted in and out of consciousness, her dreams filled with basketball courts that stretched endlessly and a familiar laugh she couldn't quite place. During one lucid moment, she grabbed Grandma Rose's hand. "Did Marcus make it to practice?" "Oh, baby girl." Grandma Rose stroked her granddaughter's thin hair. He's still practicing. They all are. They miss their coach. Zaria's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Grandma. I tried to be strong like Daddy, but I'm so tired. You listen to me, Zaria Chen. Grandma Rose's voice caught. You are the strongest person I know. Stronger than your daddy ever was, because you didn't just fight. You taught others how to fight too. A weak smile crossed Zaria's face. Can you show me the Shaq video? The one with the little boy? But before Grandma Rose could reach for the tablet, Marcus appeared in the doorway, clutching something in his hands. Coach Z? His voice quivered. We made something for you. Behind him, Sarah, Lily, and several other children from the ward gathered, some in wheelchairs, others supported by IV poles. In Marcus's hands was a phone. Tommy's mom helped us, he explained, pressing play. The video began with Marcus, orange beanie bright against the hospital walls. Dear Mr. Shaq, my name is Marcus, and Coach Z taught me how to bounce a ball when I thought I couldn't do anything anymore. Sarah appeared next. She showed me that being in a wheelchair doesn't mean you can't be an athlete. Lily, her voice small but clear, she makes the scary place not so scary. One by one, the children shared their stories. The video ended with all of them demonstrating the Coach Z bounce, their balloon basketballs bouncing in perfect unison. 3 million views already, Marcus announced proudly. The whole world wants to meet you, Coach Z. Zaria tried to respond, but her voice wouldn't come. The room was starting to spin again. Dr. Patterson appeared in the doorway, his face grave. Children, I think Coach Z needs to rest now. As the kids were ushered out, Marcus turned back one last time. We love you, Coach Z. Please don't go away like my sister did. The words hung in the air like a prayer. Across the world, in a brightly lit Tokyo studio, Shaquille O'Neal was filming take 27 of a commercial for Japanese sports drinks. His phone buzzed again, another notification about Dr. Shaq meets Zaria. Mr. O'Neal, the director called, we need one more take. Shaq nodded absently, his mind on the video he'd just watched of children bouncing balloon basketballs in a hospital ward. Something about it tugged at his memory. A promise made long ago in another hospital, to another fighter who'd taught him what true strength looked like. Mr. O'Neal? The take? But Shaq was already walking off the set, his phone pressed to his ear. Get me the first flight to Philadelphia. No, I don't care about the contract. Some things are more important than commercials. What he didn't know, couldn't know, was that back in Philadelphia, the monitors in room 417 were beginning to show dangerous numbers, and Dr. Patterson was having the hardest conversation of his career with Grandma Rose. The clock was ticking, and not even the most powerful slam dunk could stop it. The Tokyo night sparkled with neon, but Shaquille O'Neal barely noticed as he paced his hotel room, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care about the penalty clause, he growled into the device. Something's not right. I need to be in Philadelphia. His agent's voice crackled through the speaker. Shaq, you're contractually obligated to finish these commercials. 3 more days. That's all they're asking. Shaq stopped pacing, his eyes drawn to his reflection in the hotel window. For a moment, he saw himself as he'd been 20 years ago, standing in a Philadelphia hospital room, making a promise he'd never forgotten. You don't understand, he said quietly. This isn't about basketball. On his laptop, the video of Coach Z's kids played on repeat. Each bounce of their balloon basketballs echoed something in his memory. Something about another young fighter who'd taught sick kids to play from a hospital bed. Pull up everything you can find about this girl, he told his agent. "Zaria Chen, I need to know." He trailed off, not sure what he needed to know. Just that something about this story felt personal, like a play he'd run before but couldn't quite remember. In Philadelphia, the night shift was just beginning at the Children's Hospital. Nurse Jenny made her rounds, pausing outside room 417. Through the window, she could see Grandma Rose slumped in her chair, finally asleep after 3 days of vigil. On the bed, Zaria's chest rose and fell with frightening slowness. "How is she?" Carmen appeared beside her, coffee in hand. Jenny shook her head. "They're making her comfortable. That's all they can do now." The videos reached 30 million views, Carmen whispered. "Celebrities are sharing it, NBA teams, but Shaq's still in Tokyo," Jenny finished. Down in the playroom, unable to sleep, Marcus sat with Sarah and Lily. They'd smuggled in real basketballs, practicing the coach. Z bounce in whispers. "If we get good enough," Marcus told the others, "maybe she'll wake up to teach us more." In his hotel room, Shaq pulled up Diana Martinez's original article about Coach Z. His eyes caught on a detail he'd missed before, a quote from Zaria about why she loved basketball. "It reminds me of my dad," the article read. "He was huge and gentle, just like Shaq. He taught me that basketball isn't just about scoring, it's about making everyone around you better." Shaq's hands began to shake. He remembered those words. He'd said them himself to a young man in a Philadelphia hospital room 2 decades ago, a young man who'd started a basketball program for his fellow cancer patients. "What was his name?" Shaq muttered, racking his memory. What was his name? He dialed his agent again. "Find out who Zaria Chen's father was. Now!" While he waited, Shaq opened his phone's photo archive. He kept pictures from every hospital visit, every Make-A-Wish meeting, every life he'd touched over his career. 20 years of memories. His phone buzzed with a text, a single photo from his agent, a newspaper clipping from 2002. The headline read, "Local hero Michael Chen, founder of Hospital Hoops program, loses battle with leukemia." In the accompanying photo, a younger Shaq stood next to a tall, smiling man in a hospital gown. They were both demonstrating a basketball move for a group of sick children. "Michael," Shaq whispered. "Michael Chen." The memory crashed over him, like a wave. Michael had been different from other patients, more concerned with helping others than himself. He'd started teaching basketball from his hospital bed, using wadded-up paper when they couldn't have real balls in the ward. "Promise me something," Michael had said during Shaq's last visit. "Promise you'll keep showing people that size isn't just about being big, it's about how many lives you can touch," Shaq had promised. It had become his guiding principle through all his hospital visits, all his work with kids. And now, Michael's daughter was lying in a hospital bed, fighting the same battle, teaching the same lessons. Shaq's hands shook as he dialed the commercial director's number. "Mr. O'Neill?" The director answered, despite the late hour. "About tomorrow's shoot." "I need to tell you a story," Shaq interrupted, "about a promise I made 20 years ago." In Philadelphia, Marcus finally dozed off in the playroom, a balloon basketball still clutched in his hands. Sarah and Lily slept. Nearby, their wheelchairs pushed together like a fortress. Up in room 417, one of Zaria's monitors began to beep more slowly. Grandma Rose stirred in her chair, reaching for her granddaughter's thin hand. "Stay with me, baby girl," she whispered. "Just a little longer." In Tokyo, Shaq stood at his hotel window, watching the sun rise over the city. His decision was made. Some promises couldn't wait 3 days. "Michael," he said to the dawn, "I'm coming to keep my promise to your daughter. But in the race between hope and time, every second counted. And the seconds were running out. The Philadelphia Children's Hospital had seen its share of celebrities and athletes over the years, but none had arrived quite like this. No media crews, no camera flashes, just a large man in a simple black hoodie, carrying a small duffel bag, walking through the quiet morning halls. The night shift nurses did double takes as Shaquille O'Neal passed their station. No entourage, no fanfare, just purpose in every step. Mr. O'Neal? Nurse Jenny nearly dropped her coffee cup. We weren't expecting you until... Which room? His voice was soft, urgent. Fine 17, she whispered. But she's had a rough night. The doctors say... Shaq was already moving, his long strides eating up the hallway. He'd made this walk before, in this same hospital 2 decades ago. Different floor, different room, same heavy feeling in his chest. Outside room 417, he paused. Through the window, he could see an elderly woman slumped in a chair, her hand clutching that of a small figure in the bed. The walls were covered with basketball posters, handmade cards, and children's drawings. One caught his eye, a stick figure in an orange beanie doing what was labeled the Coach Z bounce. His hand shook slightly as he knocked. Grandma Rose stirred, blinking at the massive shadow in the doorway. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then, 20 years of memories crashed over her like a wave. "You came," she said simply, tears filling her eyes. "You came just like you did for Michael." Shaq stepped into the room, his presence somehow making it feel both smaller and safer at the same time. "Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry I didn't realize sooner. Michael's daughter, she has his heart." Grandma Rose smiled through her tears, always thinking of others first. On the bed, Zaria lay still, her chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. The girl who had brought so much life to the hospital now seemed to be barely holding on to her own. "The doctors say..." Grandma Rose's voice broke. "They say we should prepare." "No." Shaq's voice was firm but gentle. "Not yet. Michael taught me something about miracles in this hospital. And from what I've seen, his daughter's been creating them every day." He reached into his duffel bag and pulled out what looked like a bundle of medical gloves. With practiced ease, he began to blow them up, turning them into the balloon basketballs that had become famous through Zaria's videos. "Tell me about her program," he said as he worked. "Tell me everything." As Grandma Rose talked, life began, stirring in the children's ward. Word spread in whispers and texts. Shaq was here. He'd come for Coach Z. Marcus was the first to appear in the doorway, his orange beanie slightly crooked from sleep. His eyes went wide at the sight of his basketball hero sitting cross-legged on the floor, creating balloon basketballs. "Come on in, young man," Shaqy called softly. "I hear you've mastered the Coach Z bounce." Marcus glanced at the bed, then at Grandma Rose, who nodded encouragement. Slowly, he entered the room. Could you show me if I'm doing it right?" His voice trembled. "Better yet," Shaq smiled. "How about you show me? I've been practicing, but I hear you're the expert." One by one, other children appeared. Sarah wheeled herself in. Lily peeked around the doorframe. Soon, room 417 was filled with quiet instruction, as Marcus demonstrated the technique he'd learned from Coach Z. "Eyes up," he explained seriously. "Champion's posture. That's what Coach always says." "Champion's posture," Shaq repeated, his voice catching as he remembered Michael saying those exact words. "Your coach learned that from her daddy. And you, Know what? Her daddy learned it right here in this hospital. The children stilled, sensing a story. 20 years ago, Shaq continued, his hands working another balloon basketball, I met a man named Michael Chen. He was sick, like many of you are sick, but he didn't let that stop him from teaching others. He started a basketball program right here, using paper balls when they couldn't have real ones. Just like Coach Z, Sarah exclaimed. Just like Coach Z, Shaq nodded. Because great ideas don't die. They get passed down like a perfect assist from one heart to another. On the bed, Zaria's monitors beeped steadily. Grandma Rose hadn't moved from her side, but now she reached into her worn purse and pulled out her wallet. From it, she extracted a creased photograph. Show them, she told Shaq. Show them the connection. Shaq took the photo carefully in his massive hands. There he was, 20 years younger, teaching a basketball move alongside a tall, grinning man in a hospital gown. The man's smile was identical to the one in all of Coach Z's videos. Your coach's father and I made a promise, Shaq told the children, that we'd keep showing people that true strength isn't about how tall you are or how many points you score. It's about how many lives you touch, how many people you make better. He looked at the still figure on the bed. And his daughter. His amazing daughter. She's touched more lives than either of us could have imagined. Is she going to wake up? Lily's small voice asked the question they were all afraid to voice. Before Shaq could answer, a new sound filled the room, a change in the rhythm of the monitors. Grandma Rose leaned forward, squeezing Zaria's hand. Baby girl, she whispered. There's someone here to see you. Zaria's eyelids fluttered. The room held its breath. And in that moment, as dawn broke over Philadelphia, something stirred in room 417. Something that felt like hope. Something that felt like a promise kept. Zaria's eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the morning light streaming through the hospital window. For a moment, everything was a blur of shapes and shadows. Then her vision cleared, and she found herself looking up at a face she'd seen countless times in videos, but never in person. Welcome back, Coach Z, Shaquille O'Neal smiled gently. Your team's been waiting for you. Zaria blinked, certain she was dreaming. But no, there was Marcus in his orange beanie, and Sarah in her wheelchair, and Lily clutching her teddy bear. And there was her grandmother, tears streaming down her face, still holding her hand like she'd never let go. Shaq? Her voice was barely a whisper. But how? Sometimes, he said, settling into a chair that seemed too small for his frame. The best plays are the ones we don't plan, the ones that come straight from the heart. He held up a balloon basketball, demonstrating a perfect Coach Z bounce. Though I hear I need some practice to match your student's technique. Marcus stepped forward proudly. I showed him the right way, Coach Z, just like you taught us. A weak smile crossed Zaria's face. Champion's posture? Champion's posture, Marcus nodded seriously. Eyes up, heart strong. Shaq exchanged a look with Grandma Rose. You know, Zaria, those words, eyes up, heart strong, they didn't start with you. They didn't even start with me. He reached for something in his duffel bag. It was a tablet, but not just any tablet. It was her tablet, the one that had fallen during her collapse. The screen lit up to show her favorite video. Shaq helping the little boy dunk during warm-ups. But before I show you something special, he said, I need to know if you're strong enough for some visitors. There are a lot of kids in this hospital who've been missing their coach. Zaria looked at Dr. Patterson, who had quietly entered the room. After checking her vitals, he nodded slowly. Short visits, Small groups. What happened next felt like a dream to Zaria. Children began filing in, not just from her regular group, but from every floor of the children's ward. Each one carried a balloon basketball. Each one had a story. Coach Z taught me that being brave doesn't mean not being scared, one boy said. She showed me I can still play, even with my leg in a cast, said another. She makes me forget about the medicine, a tiny girl whispered. As each child spoke, Shaq's smile grew wider. Finally, he held up his hand, and the room fell silent. Zaria, he said, his voice thick with emotion. 20 years ago, in this same hospital, I met someone who taught me what real strength looks like. He started a program, just like yours, teaching sick kids to play basketball. He showed them that it wasn't about winning games. It was about winning moments, about making each day count. Zaria's heart began to race. On her bedside table, she could see the familiar photo of her father, the one she'd grown up seeing every day. That man, Shaq continued, turning the tablet to show a new photo, one she'd never seen before, was your father. The image showed a younger Shaq standing next to a tall, laughing man in a hospital gown. They were surrounded by children, all holding paper basketball balls. The man's smile, it was her smile, her father's smile. "Daddy," Zaria whispered, touching the screen. Michael Chen was more than just a patient, Shaq explained. He taught me that the biggest impacts often come from the smallest moments. We made a promise together, right here in this hospital, that we'd keep showing people that true strength isn't about power or size, it's about how many hearts you touch. Grandma Rose pulled out her wallet, showing Zaria the creased photo she'd carried all these years. Your father never told you about meeting Shaq because that's not what mattered to him. What mattered was the promise they made, to spread joy, to lift others up, to make every moment count. And you, Zaria, Shaq smiled, you've kept that promise without even knowing it existed. The Coach Z bounce? Your father invented that. He called it the Hope Hop back then. Different name, same purpose. To show kids that they could still play, still laugh, still live fully, even in their hardest moments. Tears rolled down Zaria's cheeks as she looked around the room at her team, her family. Each face told a story of hope, of courage, of lives touched and changed. I have something else to show you, Shaq said, pulling out his phone. He played a video of children in hospitals across the country, all doing the Coach Z bounce. Your father's legacy, your legacy, it's spreading. Hospitals everywhere are starting balloon basketball programs. They're calling it the Coach Z Initiative. Marcus stepped forward, clutching his balloon basketball. Can we show you something, Coach? We've been practicing while you were sleeping. Zaria nodded, unable to speak through her tears. The children arranged themselves in a circle. Then, led by Marcus, they began to bounce their balloons in perfect unison. 1, 2, 3. As Zaria watched her students perform, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Strength. Not the physical strength that had been fading from her body, but something deeper. Something her father had passed down to her, and she had passed on to these children. Your daddy would be so proud, Grandma Rose whispered. He is proud, Shaq corrected gently. Because his dream didn't end when he left us. It grew. It evolved. It became something even more beautiful through his daughter. Just then, Marcus made his first real basket, not with a balloon, but with the lightweight basketball someone had brought in. The room erupted in cheers. Coach Z, he beamed. Did you see? Did you see? Zarya smiled through her tears. Champion's posture, Marcus. Just like my daddy taught me without me even knowing it. As the morning sun filled room 417, Zarya Chen realized that some assists crossed time itself, passed from one generation to the next, each one making the play more beautiful than before. And though her own game might be in its final quarter, the team she had built, the legacy she had created, would keep scoring long after the final buzzer. Because that's what champions do. They make everyone around them better. Eyes up. Heart strong. Game on. We hope Zarya and Shaq's story touched your heart today. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can echo across generations, changing lives in ways we never expect. Just like Coach Z's balloon basketball program, your support helps spread these messages of hope and courage to others who need them. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear how this story resonated with you and your community. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel. Every subscription helps us share more stories of everyday heroes like Zarya, who remind us that true strength isn't measured in championships, but in the lives we touch. Remember Coach Z's words, eyes up, heart strong. Let's keep spreading kindness, one assist at a time.